A few years ago, when I was 11 years old, a woman who seemed like a Karen tried to assault my younger brother, so I reacted by slapping her. I know that at the time I was impulsive and a bit irrational, but I remember what happened very well. It was July, in a famous city in France, and it was quite hot for a mountainous area. My mom, my brother, and I went out for a walk, but after a long day of hiking, my mom left us in the car while she went to the supermarket to get some things. The market was right next to where we parked, so it was a common practice. My brother and I stayed in the car, parked in a convenient spot, because the town was pretty busy. Suddenly, a pregnant woman, about 40 years old, with her young daughter, stopped right next to us, blocking a one-way street. She started banging on the back window of the car, so I rolled down my window to see what she wanted. She began speaking to us in French as if we were her kids, but I barely understood the language. After realizing we were confused, she switched to English and started yelling at us, asking why we were parked in such a convenient spot when she was pregnant and needed to get things for her daughter. The spot wasn't reserved for priority parking, and we had paid for it. So I politely told her that my mom was in the supermarket and that we couldn't leave. That's when things got worse. She asked me to hand her the car keys so she could park in our spot and move us to a farther location. My brother, who was only 9 years old and was already pretty scared, mentioned that she could park in another spot farther away. She got furious and started yelling at him, saying that he should be more respectful. By this point, there was a line of cars behind her and horns started honking. Suddenly, she got out of her car and tried to reach in through the window to grab the keys and assault my brother. That's when I reacted and slapped her hand with all the force I had. She got angry and threatened to call the police. While I saw a small red mark on her arm where I had hit her, my mom heard the commotion and ran to help us, with the groceries in her hands. The woman's daughter was crying, and there was a line of impatient drivers behind her. When my mom arrived, the woman started cursing at us in French before storming off in a rage. Although my mom was upset that I had slapped the woman, she understood the situation when I explained what had happened. In the end, she was still glad I had protected my younger brother, even though things got a bit out of hand. I protected my brother. It was a crazy situation, full of twists and turns, and it felt like the whole thing could get out of control at any moment. Someone came up to the car we were in and tried to move the vehicle, even though they knew there were kids inside. That's scary. Who thinks they can do that with other people's kids? Especially when we know they paid for that parking spot, so their mom could do some shopping. Sure, I understand the woman was pregnant, but that doesn't justify acting so out of control. I'm glad the kid in the story had the courage to protect his brother and keep that rude person away from them. I would have done the same. The restaurant story was also a mess. I work in an American-style restaurant, serving burgers, chicken wings, and other things. We have a small bar, but it's more family-oriented than a pub crowd. I've been there for 6 years, and I've dealt with my share of difficult customers, but this family from the weekend was one of the worst. They were celebrating a birthday with 18 people total, including kids and adults. The grandmother, the grandfather, the parents of the kids, and even the birthday boy's friends, all together. At the same place, there was a booth near the window where a couple of teenagers were sitting. They were about 14 years old and from my school. The boy was a soccer player, smart, and always got good grades. The girl was really nice, always supporting her boyfriend at games, but didn't seem too interested in studies, even though she was intelligent. They were there, chatting, not bothering anyone. I went over to say hi, and they were happy to talk to me, maybe because the boy saw me as a young figure he could relate to. The birthday family started getting rude, making unnecessary comments, and the kids at the party were getting a bit rowdy. It was like there was no respect for other people's space. Even so, I tried to stay calm and be professional, but sometimes people just cross the line, right? The problem started when the parents of one of the kids saw a boy and a girl kissing in a booth at the restaurant. The mother of these parents asked me to go talk to the teenagers and tell them to stop kissing. I explained that there were no rules against a couple showing affection in public, but she grew increasingly irritated with my response. She insisted that the kissing was inappropriate because there were young children around, but I couldn't do anything because they weren't breaking any restaurant rules. Even so, the mother decided to go to the teenagers' booth to demand that they stop kissing. The teenagers politely asked her to step back, but she persisted and then noticed that the boy had painted nails. From there, she started talking about how disgusting it was, and the boy seemed about to lose his patience. Several staff members came over to try to calm the situation, but the woman refused to leave. We said we would call the restaurant owner if she didn't back off. The other adults at the party began to complain aggressively, saying they would sue the restaurant for indecent exposure. The owner came and tried to calm the mother down, but she kept going on about what she thought was appropriate for children. We had to take her to another part of the restaurant to talk to her in private. It was only when the teenagers finished eating and left the restaurant that we brought the mother back to the main dining area. After this incident, the parents were banned from the restaurant for quite some time. At least the ending was fair. Those parents got the punishment they deserved. A couple of teenagers kissing innocently isn't doing anything wrong. They weren't doing anything indecent or inappropriate. To me, it seemed like a simple gesture of affection, something we see every day. Now, talking about another complicated story, my boyfriend, who is now my ex, began repeatedly accusing me of cheating even though I hadn't done anything wrong. I had suspected for months that he was cheating on me because he was acting strangely with me. After many denials, he finally admitted that he had slept with several women without me knowing. He claimed he was battling PTSD from having been in jail and said he felt lonely in our relationship. Even though I was devastated, I decided to stay friends with him because I believed that over time, we could work through it together. But then, out of nowhere, he started accusing me of having an affair with another man. At first, he made comments in a joking tone, but soon the accusations became more serious. Remember, he had no evidence for these accusations. He just said he knew what I had done. The whole situation was a huge disappointment for me because I had always been faithful and did my best to keep our relationship strong. It's hard to deal with someone who accuses you without proof, especially when you know that he was the one in the wrong. There came a point when I realized that I could no longer fix my relationship with him. He refused to recommit to me, refused to accept that I hadn't cheated on him. It left me devastated. I loved him so much and desperately wanted to make things right, but no matter what I did, he wouldn't believe me. I let him check my phone, shared my location when I was out, but nothing seemed to be enough to earn his trust. We reached a point where I told him that if he couldn't trust me, we couldn't keep in contact. He agreed, but then he tried to flip the situation, saying that I was the one ruining everything, insinuating that he only cheated because he thought I had done the same before. It was an absurd lie, but I realized that he was trying to put the blame on me to justify his own mistakes. In the last few weeks, I tried to keep my distance from him, but he kept calling, wanting to meet up for drinks or dinner. He'd say that he loved me, that he missed me, and he would bring up memories from our relationship to try to win me back. This made everything very difficult because I really missed him and wanted to be with him. But I knew he was seeing other women while trying to pull me back in. Why would he do this to me if he really wanted to work things out? Why would he make up lies to make me feel guilty? Sometimes it felt like he just wanted to emotionally torture me. I didn't know what to do, but in the end, I realized that it was best to cut off all contact. He was clearly emotionally immature and trying to blame me for his mistakes. I knew I had been faithful, never did anything wrong, but he couldn't accept that. In the end, I had to block his calls and stop talking to him. He didn't care about my feelings, and I deserved much more than that. As for the neighbor with the controlling attitude, the problem started when he threw a party and then demanded that his guests be allowed to use our bathroom. It happened last night. My partner and I are from the downstairs apartment, and we have a side door that opens onto a shared lawn for everyone. He told us he was having a party and asked us to move our wooden planters from the patio because he needed space for the barbecue. Of course, that wasn't going to happen. First, because the patio is ours, not shared space. Second, because the planters are right next to the glass door, an important spot for us. When he persisted, we realized he was still trying to control the entire building, even after a period of apparent calm. We weren't going to give in because it was our space, and we needed to stand our ground. I didn't want just anyone staring into my living room all night while I was cooking. My partner reminded the neighbor that she doesn't own the building and that we weren't going to move our things just because she wanted us to. After that, one of her friends came over to ask what was going on since they'd already set up a barbecue in the backyard. The neighbor huffed, stomped her foot, and left without saying a word to us, so we thought everything was resolved. But it didn't take long for the problem to start again. A few hours later, we closed the curtains for a bit of privacy because, to be honest, whoever designed this building didn't think about privacy when they installed these huge glass windows that looked straight into our apartment. We could hear the laughter, conversations, and the sound of food being prepared outside when we heard another knock on the door. I was preparing dinner, so my partner answered again. This time, it was one of the neighbor's friends, saying that she needed to use the bathroom, and the neighbor, the same one who had tried to take over our patio, had told her to knock on our door instead of going upstairs to her own apartment. My partner politely explained that she couldn't use our bathroom, and she apologized for the intrusion. Not even 2 minutes later, another knock on the door. This time, my partner was visibly irritated. The neighbor started questioning why he dared expect her guests to go upstairs to use the bathroom and said that he needed to keep the door open to make it easier for her guests to access. Remember, this is our private apartment. My partner, who's usually a calm and rational guy, lost his patience and told the neighbor to leave us alone and stop bothering us. He explained that the bathroom was ours and that she had no right to demand anything. If she knocked on our door again, he would call the police for harassment. At this point, one of the neighbor's friends came to apologize and asked her to stop bothering us. She wished us a good night. We expected the party to last all night and be loud, but, surprisingly, it ended around 1 in the morning. When I woke up the next day, everything in the backyard was clean, except for our planters, which had been conveniently knocked over. The funny thing is that there was nothing planted in them, just cat litter, so I hope they enjoyed that. To me, it's amazing that a neighbor like this is friends. Who acts this way? Did she really think she could invade our space, and we would just accept it? It's absurd. I'm glad my partner stood firm and put this neighbor in her place. With people like her, you have to be firm and make it clear that certain behaviors won't be tolerated. As for the issue with my girlfriend, we've been together for 3 years, but she constantly brings up things from the past that hurt her, and I don't know what to do anymore. To give you some context, we got together for the first time about 4 years ago, but the relationship only lasted a year. My girlfriend and I have had a somewhat rocky relationship. We were together for a year, then separated for over a year, and now we've been together again for just over a year. During that time apart, she moved far away but then returned to be near me. The problem is that she still brings up things from the past that hurt her. One of the main issues is a friend of mine, who my girlfriend believes crossed boundaries. She thinks this friend treated me like I was her boyfriend, hugging me too much, talking to me without including my girlfriend, and acting overly familiar. This friend was my roommate's girlfriend, and we lived together, so we had a platonic relationship. I moved out of that house years ago, but my girlfriend still mentions that I should have been firmer with this friend when we were together the first time. To avoid conflicts, I hardly talk to this friend anymore. But my girlfriend still makes comments like, "You let her disrespect our boundaries and didn't do anything about it," or "It would have been nice if she had respected our lines." I try to keep my distance to avoid issues, but it seems like the matter still bothers her. Another problem occurred about 7 months ago when my girlfriend and I planned to go to a music festival with a group of friends. At the time, she lived on the other side of the country, but then got an attractive job offer near me and decided to move. The issue was that her move coincided with the festival weekend, and she couldn't go. I had already bought tickets, flights, and rented a house, so I decided to go to the festival anyway. She insisted that she needed help with the move, but I suggested that she could reschedule for another weekend. She didn't like the idea, as she had to start her new job the following week. She still says things like, "You shouldn't have let me drive alone," or "I don't know if I can trust you because you chose the festival over me." Looking back, I wish I had stayed to help her, but I had already invested a lot of money, and it was the first time in a long time I would see my friends. These are some of the problems she keeps bringing up. I've apologized multiple times and tried to explain my side, but she still seems resentful. This always ends up in arguments, and I don't know how to resolve these issues. Does anyone have any ideas on how to deal with this type of situation? It seems like these old issues keep coming back to haunt us, and I don't want this to continue causing problems in our relationship. I think we should consider couples therapy, and honestly, we should have done it a while ago. However, the cost might be an issue. What do I do? First, answering the reader's question, No, it's not normal to keep criticizing past mistakes if you've already apologized multiple times. If the other person keeps bringing up the issue even after sincere apologies, that's toxic and a red flag. No one should dig up old wounds to win an argument. If that happens, it's a sign that something is seriously wrong. In this specific case, it seems like the woman in this relationship isn't mature enough to forgive and let the past go. I wish him good luck trying to salvage the relationship, but honestly, it's hard when someone can't forgive. About the snoring issue, my girlfriend snores so much that I have to sleep in another room to get some rest. We've been together for 6 months, but have been close friends for 3 years. We sleep together often, but her snoring is so loud that I can't sleep. I've mentioned to her how much it affects me, but she doesn't seem to take it seriously. To get some rest, I sleep on the couch or an extra bed, then try to get back to bed before she wakes up, so she doesn't notice. But she started to notice and thinks I just don't like sleeping next to her. I use a CPAP machine for sleep apnea, so I suggested she do a sleep study to understand why her snoring is so intense, but she thinks it's unnecessary because she sleeps well and doesn't feel like she has a problem. This leaves me not knowing what to do. Am I overreacting? Or does she need to be more sensitive to the impact of her snoring on my quality of sleep? Maybe clear communication could help resolve this. After all, nobody wants to wake up in the morning feeling exhausted. And now, a story from a podcast. Was I the jerk for yelling at a Karen after she almost hit me at a Sonic drive-in? This story happened 1.5 years into the pandemic, when I was about 13 years old and was heading to a church camp with friends. The trip took about 10 hours, and we were all crammed into a van and a minivan. We stopped at a Sonic drive-in to get food, and there was a line to use the order stations because most of us chose to use the drive-ins. This part of the story ends here, but from this point, you can see how some unexpected situations can happen, and sometimes dealing with difficult people requires firmness but also patience and understanding. In the case of the Sonic drive-in, things can sometimes get hectic, but as always, it's important to remember to stay calm and courteous, even in stressful situations. My friends and I were waiting for our food at Sonic drive-in. We had placed our orders and were sitting on the curb to wait. After a while, we got our food and started eating. One of my friends decided to order more food because he was still hungry, so I went with him. Our third friend went to use the bathroom at the house next door. While my friend and I were talking, a white Nissan pulled into the stall and almost ran us over. The lady rolled down her window, and the conversation went like this. The Karen said, "Get out of the way. You stupid kids. I reserved this spot." I replied, "Ma'am, I'm sorry, but my friend is waiting for his order here." I pointed to the screen to show that he was waiting, but she wasn't having it. She said, "I don't care. Just move. I reserved this spot through the app, and I'm in a hurry." I tried to explain again, but she rudely interrupted me, saying, "Shut up and get out of the way, you stupid brats." That's when I started getting annoyed. My friend tried to explain that he was waiting for his order, but the woman kept yelling, calling him a brat. I couldn't take it anymore and snapped, "Move? You almost ran us over. You have no right to tell us to move." My reaction caught everyone's attention, including the Sonic employees and my church group. But I didn't feel the least bit embarrassed for putting that woman in her place. She ended up going to another stall farther away, but not without flipping us off first. Later, the youth pastor came to talk to me to understand what happened. I explained the situation, and he was very understanding, though he did scold me for using curse words. But other than that, there was no punishment or anything else. Other people in our group came over to ask what had happened, and my friend helped me explain. Thinking about it now, I find it funny, but I feel like I could have been more patient and asked the pastor for help instead of exploding like that. Was it an impulsive reaction? Maybe, but honestly, I wasn't the jerk. That lady almost ran us over and treated us like trash. She deserved the response she got, and I feel good about standing up for my friend and myself. Sometimes, you need to be firm when people cross the line. After all, nobody should be treated with such disrespect.